So we're back, and we're a little earlier in the week, and god damn, what crazy fucking times it is. We've got the eviction moratorium that just ended.
Woo!
We've got BlackRock looking absolutely ravenously uh, just licking their lips at the thought of all this property and real estate they're going to be able to take out of the hands of American consumers and rent to them later for more money. But anyway, that's not what we
Well,
were talking about before we started.
I think that they were banking on the extension actually. Like they stand
Well,
to gain
they are, I
more.
think.
They stand to gain more if they extend it. Simply because if they extend it, that's when the landlords go under, right? If they don't extend it, then the landlords get to actually sue, kick out all the tenants, and get a whole bunch of new ones who are required to pay rent. But I can
Well,
tell
so
you,
here's the thing: is there's also the possibility of emergency loans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to get diluted out, but if they can get the landlords to tip out, then
eh,
they're all way overextended to begin with, and so all the collateral is the property. It's going to get
oh, that's
just swept.
that's it's true that they're overextended, but have no doubt anybody who's getting kicked out in the eviction is gonna have they're gonna have to pay a premium going back in, right? Because that's gonna show up on your permanent record, and that's how the landlords are gonna reclaim their losses, right? This is going to be a case where an individual or two individuals are now paying 50% more for their rent because they've decided to default, because even though they got crazy amounts of unemployment or kept their job or whatever the hell it is, and they got more money than they've ever made in their lives, they couldn't pay their rent because the government's retarded.
In a nutshell.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I do hope some properties go under. I hope some stuff goes down, and then I will happily be there to gobble up my little share. We were waiting we were actually, my wife and I were waiting for a whole bunch of people to start selling stuff, specifically like vacation homes and whatnot, that we were kind of looking to have, is to see the liquidation of that, and I expect that to be happening at some point here.
I
But it'll
see
be interesting.
you're looking to buy the real estate dip, as it were. Then.
I am a capitalist. I take pleasure in others' pain.
Well, at least you're unabashed. So that's something that we're going to have to really get into some more depth on because there's a lot to it. But that's kind of a developing and just happened kind of deal. But actually, we were talking about something a little bit different before we got on the air.
You were.
So why
We
don't
were
we
talking
continue?
about Craig's hands and what he likes to do with them. It was very creepy and weird. Apparently, he can bend himself over and clap.
Wait, you can?
Horrifying
Hold on,
things
hold
that
on,
You
hold
Craig
know,
can do
on.
with his hands.
Can you not do that?
Well, I think he was referencing the specific orifice that he claps in, which was the weird part.
Oh well.
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it in the right kind of porns, but it's still
you said
uncomfortable.
you've seen it as if you'd been spying on me, which is just fucking disgusting.
Well, Florida's Florida's a very protected state, so those of us who work for the government, we have to get our kicks the old-fashioned way and peer through windows like creepy peeping toms.
Hmm.
So we were talking about something very different, yes.
Indeed. The
We
first
after gun
thing
buybacks and
we were.
we
I
after
wonder if
3D
we should.
printing because
I
there's
just
some
wonder if
time
we should take a
available.
moment to just offer our respects to Kathy Griffin and her poor lungs.
Why? What happened to Kathy Griffin?
Uh,
She's been exhaling so much fucking trash her whole life that it caused cancer
Oh shit, that
in her
sucks.
lung.
yeah.
That
But it's
sucks
only
for her.
stage one. She's getting surgery like manana, and then she's gonna be back on her feet in a month,
I
spewing
mean,
more
still,
trash.
as much
Cancer
as
sucks.
much as I'm not a fan of the individual, I think wish her best, even if she doesn't wish it upon anybody else. Right? We can be the better people.
I mean, there's no call for that, but okay.
What's up?
Oh, I say there's no reason for all that, but sure, okay, whatever.
I mean, let me go ahead and just read some of my favorite Kathy Griffin tweets here on this subject. Fine, discharge him. He'll probably croak on the toilet by dinner time. Is he dead yet? I have shit to do, thanks. That's two of them.
I'm not saying that she's a good person.
Somebody
I'm just
check his
saying that as
pulse. If
much
there's
of an
no
asshole
pulse,
as I am, I'm not going to sit there and take a dash at somebody with cancer.
somebody check his pulse. If there's no pulse, just go to bed. It's been a long day. This is Kathy Griffin talking about Trump when he had COVID. Just mind you.
Yeah.
Again, I am not a fan of her.
And by the way, that would be Trump with probably more lung damage than she has right now.
I mean,
without a
I'm not
surgical
saying that
prospect
I
for
wish
recovery.
death upon her, but I am saying that if I
no.
went by her gravesite sometime after her death, I would at least spit on it. I mean, wouldn't you?
I mean,
And then
I'm not
the
saying
key
I'm going to
question-
take a vacation to wherever it is that she ends up being buried just to do
The
that.
key question
And
is
then,
not
regarding
whether you
Pence.
spit on it. The key is.
Would
the
you
key
clap
is,
first?
If she was on fire, would you piss on her to put her out?
That's wasting
I would
water.
still.
Well, the thing about it is, I'm kind of
Isn't there a
shy,
drought?
so
Isn't there a drought in California? That's wasting water.
yeah, I mean,
and,
think about the farmers. What about them?
Another one regarding the VP debate. Is there a fly in his head? Don't give that poor fly the Rona.
Yeah, I mean, poor thing.
Sigh. You know what? I am getting sick and tired of this headset too. So many things are failing on me.
Cancer sucks. Like, it's unequivocally bad.
It
It
really
is.
does.
It shouldn't ever be like a thing anybody has to go through. But of all the people that go through it,
I mean, I can get behind that statement.
Death, she wishes death and pain and suffering on just about everyone she disagrees with.
I mean,
I'm really not upset by her having to go through this kind of shit.
I
understand
having
having her own words repeated back to her. Like, she's getting the care she needs. I hope she's not reading Twitter right now, and that she's just in the hospital waiting. She's gonna get her surgery done.
Yeah, undoubtedly she's getting
I understand.
the best
I understand
care
all the
available.
caveats. I just,
And again, none of this is justification. This, for me saying that she's a cunt, because she's a cunt, and I'm not gonna ever apologize for saying that.
Right, and I think that we can simultaneously, call her out on her cuntishness, while simultaneously, hoping that she gets better, so that we can continue to call her out on her cuntishness.
I also hope that she never fucking returns to the New Year's Eve show, because again, someone earlier was just like, where was it? Blah blah blah. Kathy Griffin's going through rough times. If you jump on blah blah blah, you're acting basically like the liberals do when conservatives call them out for grave-standing. I said, someone hasn't had to suffer through Kathy Griffin ruining every New Year's Eve until she was dropped. He said, why on earth would you willingly turn that on? I said, and this is true when I was living with my parents and I was younger, because had I not, then I would have been picking my own Switch again. Because if you've never had that wonderful experience, it is one that makes you a man when you're like 5.
Yeah.
Go pick up a branch in the yard, son.
Yeah, that's really not something you want the folks to tell you to do.
Oh my god. Everything's failing on me, boys. My headset actually might be at the point where I might have to replace it.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Well, I can say that your cheapskatishness kept it going for some while, and I'm genuinely kind of impressed.
Look,
it is still
here's what
going.
You do with that kind of situation. You actually have the backup on standby if you know it's on its last legs. And then you go, oh, well, I got a little more time out of it. At least I didn't waste any of the time out of the other one. And then
you know what I learned? I learned
there.
from Six Sigma, my Lean Six Sigma courses.
Oh
I learned that inventory is a form of waste. So fuck you.
It's called having shit in your house. Except in this case, it would be functional shit. Not just random shit.
Far too much shit in my house. Far too much. I have been a very successful progenitor of various items,
Uh-huh.
and they have accumulated.
Yeah,
I
well,
literally have
fair
more
enough on
shit
that.
to do and work on shit than I have time available to do it. Which is one of the good things going back to lockdowns that I'm kind of looking forward to. A little bit
Speaking
of
of coming full
time,
circle on this,
having a little bit of time, do a little bit of dance.
So, it
yeah.
seems
So,
the scuttlebutt out there is that they're working on the big, special, important Pearl Harbor-esque 9/11 style speech to the public about how sorry they are about what they've
my
just
fellow
got to
Americans,
do.
we're fucked. Remember, stand underneath the doorframe, bend over, and kiss your ass goodbye.
So we've got all these illegal aliens pouring in over the border, and, we're dropping them off like little virus bombs everywhere on buses and
Yeah,
planes.
that was the
So,
thing is we're using military resources to do that too. It's not just in Texas. It's everywhere they decide to offload them, which I'm guaranteeing at this point is in all the red states
yeah, I mean, you can.
and
The
blue
argument
cities
could be
too.
made that biological warfare is being waged by the sitting government on the citizenry of the United States of America. I mean, we
Oh,
should
and they're
probably get in
unvetted.
touch with someone at the UN
Here's
because
the
I'm
thing:
pretty sure this is a war crime. But,
they're all unvetted. They're all untested. They only know that the ones they have tested have COVID because they've been hacking and coughing right next to the ones that aren't. And these people aren't from just like Guatemala or any other Nicaragua, etc. They're from all over the fucking world. Like there's a ton of African migrants that are in the crowd there. There's people from Southeast Asia that are in there. It's not there's even people from the Middle East that are in there. It's not just Central and South Americans that are showing up at the border.
maybe even some of the dreaded Iranians.
Hmm.
So like it's not like you shouldn't think of each one of them as being a potential Al Qaeda blah 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 thing. But at the same time, like there's the non-zero possibility, and the policy that's in place isn't looking for them. Period.
And this is above and beyond the whole fact that these people are essentially virus bombs. We don't know how many of them are armed, but that's a very
A good portion
simple
of
way of
them.
looking at it. Yeah, a
Well, I
very
mean,
good portion.
it's
Well,
really
the only
funny
reason that
because
they
the one thing that the one thing the Democrats came out and actually agreed with Trump on, of course they agreed after they called him a xenophobe about it,
oh
was
yeah,
locking down the fucking border. And then they started turning around and they started saying, "Oh yeah, you didn't lock down the border soon enough," and all of this other hoopla. And now you have the exact opposite thing where we have this porous border and they're trying to deal with. I mean, realistically, let's be honest. The relocation of the immigrants to various points in the country has more to do with attempting to hide the crisis that's going on at the border than it does to, secretly infiltrate the United States with COVID. But it has the same effect.
Well, yeah, it's obviously
oh
it's not
these are all
secret.
economic
It's overt,
migrants.
not covert.
Of
These
course,
are these are economic migrants who are basically convenient Democrat voters in the future.
yep.
And more importantly, as far as Democrats are concerned, and Republicans, mind you. So that's part of the reason why it's not getting fucking fixed. Um, they're also basically slave labor. They are not subject to American labor laws while they're under the threat of being deported.
Oh, there's plenty of stories
Oh,
about
and it's
exactly
horrifying.
that.
It's horrific that kind of leverage gets held over them. And here's the thing: while they're getting a paper trail coming in, that's the reason why they're sitting under that bridge in like 100-degree plus heat. Um, it's because they're waiting on papers, and those papers allow them to travel using military resources. And at their destination, they promise to come back to the court once the court issues a summons. That's their whole legal basis of being in the country, like the flimsiest basis possible. There's a promise that they'll come back. 10% of them do. That's it. And that's of the summons that have been issued so far. My guess is that number is going to drop like a rock.
Wow.
And keep in
I don't
mind,
know if y'all can
what the
hear
ones
me,
who actually do
Yes,
show up
can hear
across
you.
the border.
but this is pretty spectacular on my end.
Oh boy,
Oh,
what's
what's
going on
happened?
your end?
Okay, I'm thinking he can't hear us.
All right,
That's
my
possible.
my whole system is screwed right now.
Oh, well.
Yeah, if he's borked.
Well, I guess we were kind of fearing that might occur.
I
And
can't understand a word you guys are saying.
Sweet! It's like normal.
oh, well, I guess that was bound to happen sooner or later.
Evan, you sound like Wally. It's crazy.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of wish I was hearing this now.
It is. It is bizarre. I think it's got to be my motherboard. I'm pretty sure that's what it is at this point because it seems to be having problems. It's not pulling data from the landline that I got, or the hard line. So it's defaulted to my wireless connection.
If you
Which
fried your
is
ports,
not-
then your Mobo's gotta be screwed too.
You
Yeah.
sound like a very, very, 80s porn theater, Wally, Craig.
That's also kind of cool.
In here, that's what it sounds like. I can smell the patchouli coming through the mic.
Uh-oh.
Nice.
I tell you, it's very weird.
I can imagine. Well, if you want to bow out for the night and get yourself a
Oh,
new
sigh.
motherboard overnighted, that's probably not
Fucking
a bad
hell.
idea.
We're back to Wally.
Yeah, you might want to do that before the lockdowns start up too.
Yeah, you really might want to go ahead and get that order in tonight since, those lockdowns are probably
Before the
coming
prices.
allegedly in about 10 days.
Before the prices skyrocket.
Yeah. Go ahead and get your
Ah.
extras now.
Interesting.
So I actually saw a video of a nurse down here in Florida in Broward County.
Whoa, it just came
Who
in.
had,
Oh, are you working again?
Yeah, I'm working again.
Alright.
For how long, I don't know. But
Well, anyway, you should go ahead and get Mobo on
now we're back to not
order.
working.
Right. Yeah, now.
the moment
then.
the solution comes available.
Yeah, you should get on anything, Newegg, something, and get yourself a new motherboard on order tonight, so you can have it by the end of the
All
week.
right. Well, I am gonna say thank you guys very much for this evening, and I've got to go get a new motherboard.
You get on it, brother. Be good. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Peace, yo.
Later, man.
Later.
This is too bad because I wanted to talk about this one. All right.
We'll get to it. If you get it by the
We'll
weekend,
visit.
we'll do like a little bonus thing.
As a reference point, my ping to the Discord server is like 5,000 milliseconds.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
How the fuck is he still connected?
That's amazing.
That's five whole ass seconds. Holy shit.
Wow.
Huh.
Well, so as not to completely bork this whole thing, I'm going to go ahead and drop you on out of here.
Remove him.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
toast. Have a nice night, boys. Sorry.
No worries, man. Catch you later.
All right.
Well, I guess that was kind of unexpected.
That sucks.
Yeah,
I've been there. That sucks big.
it does. Well, these
Dude,
sometimes these things happen live on air.
I had what was it 2015? I had quote the incident. It doesn't matter what year it was. I had I always before that recommended getting Enermax power supplies because they'd never failed on me. They chug along consistently year after year. I oftentimes was able to pull old ones and put them into new builds or keep them as test bench supplies with a little modification. And then I had one that spat fucking copper out the back of it.
Oh, jeez.
Liquid copper out the back of it. Yeah, it didn't just short, it fucking fried on the inside. And I went and I was like, huh, that was weird that the room went dark. I went back over, popped the breaker back on, came back over, and flipped the switch in the back of it, and then I have orange come spraying out at me. So at that point, I looked through and I saw where it got fried and stuff. I was just like, holy shit, how the hell was this design QA'd? So yeah, never again Intermax. That was that was a shit event that should never have happened.
Yeah, that's a little horrifying. I
Yeah.
gotta be honest with you there.
So, then I had to go through the hell of figuring out which parts got nuked by that, which was fun. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah, power supply dying on you can be really bad. If it just dies, then that's not bad. But if it goes like nuclear like that, oh jeez.
Yeah. So there was this nurse in Broward County.
Yeah,
I think she was a surgical prep and post nurse. So pre-op, post-op, she would be like the intake, well, not intake nurse, the prep nurse. And then she was talking about how they have families can come back and see the patients pre and post-op. And then another, I guess the head nurse on the floor had told them that next week is going to be a COVID crisis or whatever, and that they're going to be making so that families can't do visitation for pre and post-op anymore, just in case and so on. And she's basically her intimation is that somehow there's planning involved here. The thing is, in Florida and in the rest of the United States, just to be clear, we're back to exponential phase. So that's when there's an exponential rise in cases before it kind of tapers off and goes more sigmoidal. And so in the exponential phase, it's power law behavior, which means on a log-log plot, it's a straight line. And given the fact that the average incubation time, or the mean incubation time, is 5.1 days, the 99th percentile is 14 days, that lag means that out 1 week, it's very easy to predict in the exponential phase the rise in cases. Because, again, it's just draw the line a little bit further down the plot. So, just to address that clearly, there isn't like some conspiracy or collusion going on in the background to impose some sort of manufactured crisis. There really is an exponential rise in cases, and it's happening in vaccinated persons too because it's an immune evading variant. Now, to a lesser extent, because there's still some immunity in the population that's been vaccinated, but certainly vaccinated persons are capable of at least transmitting, if not contracting full disease, which is what it is. I mean,
yeah. This is
that was
actually
kind of the
something we
case
had
before,
discussed
but
being, a real concern. In the case, what we were talking about more was the South American varieties, and I think this. Where did the Delta variant come from? Was that the English variant?
the Delta variant is the Indian variant,
Oh, okay, okay.
which had two different lines of mutation that presented at once that were both consistent with breakthrough or immune evasion. Um, and that's not good. Um, and again, it is what it is. It's you have people that are out there circulating this stuff, and again, if you're vaccinated, you can still potentially transmit the virus. There's a couple day window where there's a numbers game as to whether or not you're gonna be able to wipe out all of the virus before it can replicate, and it is possible that you can be shedding for a little while after that while your body mops up, even if you're asymptomatic. So on average, that there's 3 hops at herd immunity, and we've never been anywhere near herd immunity in this pandemic. So it is what it is. There's going to be more than 3 hops going on, and if it's sustainable circulation, then you have the potential for significant mutations to occur. So
And
it's
that's
not
kind of where
just
we are.
it's not just the unvaccinated plebs among the population that are causing the problems here. It's all the vaccinated people who are out there humping each other in the street. Uh, I'm not saying like if you get vaccinated, you should never be able to do the rest of your life again. But at the same time, like before you hit herd immunity, which is a critical threshold to achieve, maybe you shouldn't go out there pretending you've already reached it. That was the drop in lockdowns and the removal of mitigation measures, given really modest amounts of vaccination that had occurred, was entirely for Democrats to look good. And I would put it no better than Cuomo turfing all the seniors to hospice to die off. It
Oh
was the
yeah, no,
same
it was an
stupid way.
entirely optical maneuver, and
It's the
it's well,
same
we're
thing.
watching it backfire.
And like I said before, you saw the narrative flip. You saw how the Democrats suddenly had their grand reopenings in California and New York, among other places, Virginia and a few others. They had their grand reopenings. They said their states are back. Everybody can go outside and rub shoulders in public again as long as you're vaccinated and have a certificate. And yeah, it was it was complete bullshit. It was stupid. Never should have done that um, before herd immunity. And herd immunity for the original virus is might actually be achieved with continued vaccination. The Delta variant, there's no fucking herd immunity right now for that, and it's kind of laughable that we would achieve it this year. We're already 8 months into the year, and the Delta variant's been circulating for most of that. So the Delta variant's probably not going to have a vaccine in the form of some kind of booster until next year, realistically, like early next year maybe, if things are already kind of in trials. I know that the boosters that are coming out for the fall are just from the variants that were discovered last year, which did not include the Indian variant or the Delta variant or the numbers associated. It's not including the thing that's currently causing major problems. So P1, P2, those were discovered last year.
Oh, the Brazilian
Um,
variants we were talking about, basically too.
yeah, Brazilian variants, your California variant, your New York variant, your UK and South African variants. Those are probably all likely to be in the mix. I mean, I haven't looked at the trials to find out at this point because, quite frankly, it doesn't fucking matter. Um, it's the same shit again. Um, and lockdowns are a real possibility. Here's the thing: is it's not the people's fault for a lockdown being imposed. That's one thing I should make very clear right now, even though it might sound like that's what it's going to become at the end. This is not an argument for that. Um, if the government imposes a lockdown, that's not on the people. That's the government imposing a lockdown.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, well,
And so
specific to that
the
point, we
the
can look at
failure of herd
Australia.
immunity, yeah,
I mean, they're
Australia's
the
done.
perfect example of that. Like
It's
they've
nuts.
got super low numbers, and even when they get just the slightest flare up, they're going completely insane. They've got their army on the streets.
Now,
It's
here's the thing: is the zero. So, if I were to look at this like from a military perspective, you gotta have you gotta have your secure zone, and then you gotta be able to build out from that. You know, at the border of your known clear zone, see if they have any of the disease. If they don't, include them in the clear zone, and then push the border out further. New Zealand was doing this very effectively until they allowed 6 people to travel and fucked it up their quarantine. New Zealand had like no cases for the longest time. Uh, they were COVID free, and then they had again 6 people show up, and the whole country went back under because they also traveled around and spread COVID everywhere. So it doesn't take a whole lot. This is the same thing where early on, when at the very beginning of this thing, we said should have had the border shut down by the end of January. It should have been like if you came in from somewhere else and you were an American citizen, so you had the right to entry, your ass should have been in a glass box for a month.
yeah,
Like
or realistically,
like at that
a week.
stage. Well, at that stage, I would be okay. Like if we're talking about a relative handful of people here, I would have been okay at that stage using taxpayer money to compensate them for being in a glass box for a whole ass month. Because, well, what was it? By the end of February, we knew 27 days is the maximum incubation time observed.
Well,
And that
hell,
hasn't been exceeded.
I mean, that's actually quite reasonable. I mean, that's what we did with the Ebola patients. We took them to the CDC center and kept them there
You know,
until we
and
knew that they were safe.
it's possible there might have been a few thousand people that might have been affected, but a few thousand people being affected, and really just being told, hey, look, you got a choice here. You can go back and continue your vacation elsewhere, or you can go into the box here, because we're talking about border security and national security at this point. Go into the box. You'll be paid. You'll have access to the internet and yada yada. Like here is a brand new laptop to keep and take home with you. Something like that would have been perfectly reasonable to me. You know, just that would have kept the country from getting widespread. Like imagine if we had done this level of stupid with a bad outbreak of Ebola that had the same exact kind of epidemiology. Like we would have had this shit everywhere. That would have been terrible. We had 3 people come into the country with Ebola in sealed containers that went immediately to facilities designed to handle that kind of containment.
Yeah.
Like not just to a random hospital. Like they went to the CDC's treatment centers. So
Yeah, it wasn't handled like
and
something out of a Romero film. It was handled like something out of an instructional film.
I still think even that was too much. I think they should have stayed on site where they were, and we should have sent resources to them instead of bringing them here. I think it was entirely unreasonable to bring that kind of a risk into the country. But again, we handled it, and it was 3 people. So I think on the scale of a few thousand, we could still make a reasonable case that we could do something like that. But then it snowballed, and you got totally fucked by it. So we're back to the same kind of situation here, where we've got a rapid rise in cases, and we've got, so if we want to talk about like where culpability lies, I think sure you could make the argument that not reaching herd immunity is on us, but the lockdowns, that's on the government. The lack of the crap economy right now it's on the state governments and the federal government last year and this year.
Oh, sure.
Trump did fuck up in several ways in this, so his hands aren't clean on this. He did better than I think Biden would have done, or Hillary Clinton would have done, but he certainly, didn't do amazing. He's got great messaging. I'll give him that. Although that fucks up in the media because then everything's on the weird ass takes they take, and from both sides, by the way.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So like instead of having like and they have their own fuck ups, like the COVID numbers being on screen 24/7 until Biden got elected, and now they're trotting out the police officers and shit.
Yeah.
I guess the third one committed suicide, which is tragic, but that's going to be used as some sort of like fucking excuse to blame half the country for shit that didn't happen.
Oh, you mean for a mostly peaceful protest?
Well, it's not even that. Like there are people still say Sick Nick died because of protesters on day of.
Oh yeah, that.
He died 7 hours and 40 minutes after he was exposed to bear mace or bear spray. Bear spray. All right. So if someone decided to try and make an argument, and it's bullshit, and they say it's stronger than mace, and it's not. It has 1 to 2% of the oleocapsaicinoids. Mace has like 10%, but it's like it's a different one. So in terms of the Scoville rating, bear spray is like 3 million and mace is like 1 million. But once you get past 1 million, it's kind of not a big difference. The major difference is in the delivery system and the concentrations. You only you cap out like at 2% in bear spray because it's determined by EPA. Standard. It's on the amount of the substance added in, not how hot it is. And it's also distributed as a fog, like a spray, not like a stream. Mace usually comes out as like a jet, and it's designed to hit the assailant and stick to him. Bear spray is meant to be deployed as in an aerosol-like form, like a cloud of droplets.
Yeah.
And so that immediately deters after a couple of droplets get inhaled or get on skin. So bears, dogs, all the above, etc. It's all gonna. It's a very simple deterrent. Using bear spray like mace, you're not gonna get the same effect. A human that's that kind of a cunt already is gonna continue being that kind of a cunt. You're not gonna disable them. Bear spray is meant to irritate and deter, not to disable. So, moreover, all their rationalizations about how that could have somehow affected his heart, which wasn't included in the autopsy, or caused vasoconstriction, which is well past the time where that could have happened. 7 hours 40 minutes later, Brian Sicknick had 2 strokes in his brain, towards the brainstem. That's a really bad place to have a stroke, period.
Oh yeah.
But to have 2 of them in a row, that's just a physical defect of the body. It was natural causes. He died the next day after telling his family he feels fine.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that's going to cause something like that is a CIA redacted. But,
right.
Such things don't exist.
Yeah, the ice bullets.
Right.
Those cause heart attacks, not strokes.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, again,
debunked.
His heart was fine. His brain was not. So, it was distinctly a natural causes scenario. Sicknick died from having 2 strokes in the base of his brain. And again, the brainstem area, base of the brain, like the whole motor cortex area, that's all a horrible place to get a stroke.
Yeah, that's like where all the stuff that your body automatically does is.
Yeah, so
like your heart, your lungs, that kind of stuff.
So when he probably like didn't feel much and just blacked out and died. He thankfully probably went very peacefully, relatively speaking. Maybe had like a minor headache immediately before that and then gone.
Yeah,
but they're still touting him as if like he got killed by protesters. So a third cop committing suicide, or whatever. I think it's third cop committing suicide. That's horrible. We're in August now, and they're still talking. They're talking about January as if it was yesterday.
Well, they're talking about January as if it were September. And I'm sure you catch my reference.
Right. So if they're trying to link suicides happening like now back to January.
Well, I mean, I can kind of understand some of the connections, but they're not making them the same way I'd make them.
Well, it's just like, where does it end is the thing. I mean, how much information on Hillary Clinton did he have, right?
That's the question.
So, and you see the same thing with the deaths that occurred that day. You had 5 people die, and none of them were police officers. None of them were involved in stopping the riots. The only one that actually got killed by another human was Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, and she was killed by a BLM supporter. So, we've got really quite the conundrum there.
Again, if you look at the Antifa activist video, John Sullivan, who totally isn't related to any of that stuff anymore, but if you look at his video of Ashley Babbitt getting shot, she was told don't come through. I don't recall her being told come through or you'll be shot, but certainly she should have been able to see the 2 people directly in front of her with guns out, even though it was the guy to the side who shot her without her being able to see him.
Well, it wouldn't really have been much of anything to detain her at that point either.
The other people that died in the crowd, which were all of natural causes, save the one person who was just hyped on a fuck ton of Adderall. Idiot. She OD'd. And it looked like she got trampled, but she didn't. She just OD'd and died. So, but if you look at the way that's being linked, like, they started going further and further out in the crowd to point to the people that died that day to up the number. And I'm just saying, all right, after that, you got 4 or 5 people of natural causes or their own stupidity and then you got the one person who was shot. Like, how many more people are going to add in? How about everyone that died on January 6th? Period. Are they all the responsibility of the people who were rioting? The 800 people who got in.
Well, I mean, COVID's responsible for all sorts of things, so I mean, that's not that much of a jump, right?
So, it's silly to me that they keep trying to reach for these. And I had to deal with this shit with my cousin, and he was going ballistic on me for this. Like, yeah, fine. Those people died, and only one person was actually killed by someone specifically. Like, one of them you could almost call it like an unintentional suicide, like this is an OD. But like the others was like a stroke, like a couple heart attacks, and what was this, like heart failure, congestive heart failure. It was a couple of them were excited old people straining their heart to exhaustion. It's sad. It really is. At the
Oh,
same
sure.
time, like it's not because someone someone didn't run up, yell a bunch of racial epithets, and then beat the shit out of their neighbor with the red hat on, which is what you'd probably think happened if you watch some shit like CNN.
Yeah, like for instance, if we look at some of the quote unquote commission and the testimony, shall we
Oh,
say, that
good
came
lord.
out of another BLM activist, actually, who
Yeah.
we have seen attended numerous George Floyd riots, numerous BLM riots. Now, I cannot say if this individual actually participated in any of the rioting, only that he uh,
His face appeared.
yeah, he was there. He was in support of the riots, and he brought his children like an absolute idiot to at least one riot.
Holy, people who bring their kids to something like that, like they shouldn't have their kids taken away like permanently, but their kids should be taken away and brought back to their house. And then they should be told, you have to go home to take care of your kids, otherwise we're going to take your kids away.
Well, see, this is what police used to do. Unfortunately, this person is a Capitol Police
And I know
officer.
that sounds horrible. That's that I've had trouble saying that because like fundamentally that does
It grates on the libertarian in anyone, but the thing
well, the
about it
problem is
is,
it puts prior restraints on free speech, which should not exist. Then again, you shouldn't be bringing your kid to that shit because it's child endangerment. Beyond the whole possibility of watching someone with their pants down walk by shouting about how great it is to be gay. Like, and yes, I am absolutely including that month in this nonsense because it happened twice. The month, not the event. I'm sure that's happened plenty more times.
oh yeah, I mean, we all saw the rainbow dildo monkey.
God, yes, the dildo butt monkey. That was insane. The library fucking knew,
Oh,
and
they
they
knew
tried
full
to
and well
say
what
they
they were
didn't.
doing and tried to play it off.
They
Yeah.
tried to fucking say they didn't. Yeah, and then of course the guy in the costume, he fucking knew.
He's a rainbow dildo butt monkey. I mean, how do you not know I mean, that's your shebang. That's like
Right,
your
but you
deal.
see
That's your bread and butter.
the thing is like that troupe is like known for being eccentric, which is fine. But they are also told that they are going to be in front of children,
Yeah.
which
So they
is
pulled
makes it not
out.
fine.
So they pulled him out specifically, knowing his shtick.
Right.
Like, oh, we're
Well,
going in front of kids. Well, let's get the one that's
keep in
demonic
mind,
that like is enamored with
yeah, but
children.
keep in mind that that troupe of characters, think of them as like being like Cirque du Soleil. You have to be in character when you're performing, etc. Like they're supposed to be kind of weird. At the same time, though, they knew they were going in front of kids.
Right. So you don't send your rainbow dildo monkey. You send, Timmy the talking dog that has an existential crisis every now and then.
Or you cut the fucking dildo off the costume.
Yeah, for fuck's sake. I mean, at a bare
Is
minimum.
it buttoned on or something? Because like you could just unbutton it and take it off. That would be good. Or is it velcroed on? My guess is that for a character that is designed like that, there's got to be the gag where the dildo comes off anyway. Just leave it off. You know, or put fucking trousers on it and leave it off. You know,
Some undies or something, for the love of fuck.
like yeah, kids are gonna find out that monkeys have penises too, but they can find that out at the zoo, not in the fucking library. Or if they find out in the library, let it be from either watching a nature documentary or reading a National Geographic magazine or something.
Yeah, that's how we had to figure it out, by God.
Yeah.
No rainbow
Yes,
dildo
if you go to
monkeys
the
in my
zoo,
childhood.
well, yeah, that's the other thing is they don't have fucking rainbows on there. If you go to the zoo at the right time of day and you're a child, you will find out for damn sure that monkeys have penises.
You will. You will. You'll see how they work and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you'll find out that
maybe to your detriment.
zookeepers are either then you'll find out that zookeepers are either humans or very disturbed humans.
Well, I mean, sometimes they'll just throw things at you, and
Or phased completely, like, you know, completely used to it.
well,
Like, yep, that's Herbert the chimp going at it again.
yeah, one of those things you just kind of. It's amazing what a person can get used to. It really is. It really is. Like the people that work in the DC prison system. I mean, they can get used to watching people be tortured on a day-to-day basis and just be fine with it.
And so it's weird that like so all these BLM nutcases or Antifa nutcases will just get bailed. They'll get bailed out of jail by a running VP candidate,
Yeah.
or at the time running presidential candidate.
Yeah. So our current vice president was, actively aiding and abetting terrorist organizations, but that's just not something we really talk about today.
But you see, so these people would all get out on bail easily. There's plenty of money for bail to get the people charged for January 6th out of jail, but they're all being held without bond because reasons. And the charges they're being held on are not do not rise to the severity of their treatment.
They're woefully inadequate for what's happening to them. Like, many of these people are held on
just trespassing.
Yeah.
Or what the fuck's it called?
It's an interference
when
charge.
when basically when you're an asshole in public. What the hell is it?
Oh, like a disorderly or whatever.
That's it. Yes, disorderly conduct. Thank you. Like a lot of them are being held on trespassing, disorderly conduct, basically civil disobedience charges. Which, by the way, they should have been charged with. If you're being civilly disobedient, you take the lashings. That's the price of the free speech at the moment, and then you take it to court and you win, and you go home with an extra couple $1,000s because the lawyer takes the rest. You know,
sure enough.
You go through the process and you come out the other side and you're done. They absolutely should have been charged. Like, they shouldn't be held without bail. You know, like
in solitary confinement, 20 hours out of a day. No less. Now, I'm obviously not speaking for everybody, but these are reports of things that are happening to individuals.
My suspicion is that that's at most a handful, and probably for those who are, let's be fair here, there are probably a couple of sovereign citizens in that crowd. So I could see how the civil disobedience probably didn't end outside the jail.
Well, that's a possibility, but I mean, if we look at the what was it, the
Q shaman or whatever,
held. He turned his he just completely went turncoat as soon as he was given the opportunity. Like, oh yeah, Donald ensorcelled me with his magic talk of walls and getting rid of illegal aliens, and I was mesmerized by him.
If you're sitting there in the face of the whole government coming down on your ass, I can give him a pass at that point. At the same time, like, he wasn't relevant before, and he's probably never going to be relevant after.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I would really hope you could come up with something a little bit better than that bullshit, though. I mean, that's pretty fucking thin. I mean, that is as thin as what they're, holding people on. But then again, yeah, as you say, if that's what they said, hey, you say these magic words, the things happen. Well, that's very possibly what happened.
You can have your vegan meals again. Well, I love that. His hunger strike is because he's a fucking vegetarian. They won't
Yeah.
serve me the cabbage I want in jail. Well, get in line, I guess.
I mean, if the guy actually does have dietary concerns, they do, I believe, have to make
Well, look,
considerations for that.
there are things like having a medical issue that dictates it. Like there are people who are pescatarians not by their choice. They'd probably love to have a steak or chicken sandwich or whatever. But they probably also flop if they eat it. Or there's people that have like hemochromatosis that need to eat steak. So like I get that there's that kind of an issue, but the way he sounded, it's my guess
He
is it's
didn't
not a
to provide
dietary.
a
Like,
convincing case, shall we
I
say.
don't think my guess is it didn't sound like it's a dietary necessity.
Yeah, no,
That's okay.
that's entirely possible. And I don't really talk about any of my issues, but I actually do have some of those issues. But
Right.
it's neither here nor there, so nobody really needs to know or care about that. And also, when's the last time you heard me preaching about my ultra specific diet? You're probably not
Found the
going to.
fucking vegan.
And I'm not, actually.
I'm
Eggs are
just fucking
awesome.
with you.
No,
No,
no, no, no.
I love that one. It's just just walk into a room. Wow, man, that veganism, weird stuff. Actually, found the vegan.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, there's some weird, weird vegans. For sure. Especially the ones that try and force veganism on their pets. That's wrong. Don't ever,
Dude,
ever do that.
yeah,
Please. Ever. If you're
that
listening to
is
this and you're a
man.
vegan, don't do that to your fucking animals. Please.
Well, actually, they probably are at that point.
Yeah, but I imagine that kind of crowd isn't going to really be our audience. So I really doubt this is ever going to reach those ears.
Well, I certainly hope not. If you're out there fucking an animal right now and you're listening to this, shame on you,
Be
and
better.
I
Come
hope the
on.
cops find you.
Oh, speaking of cops finding people, if somehow the corners of the internet that don't intersect where
Oh my
you would
God.
already know what's happened, one of the
Oh
most
my
famous
God.
internet personalities in existence has been arrested.
Christopher Chandler.
Yes, Christian, isn't it? Or no, is it Christopher or is it Christian?
It's I think it's Christian.
I think it is. Yeah, Christian Weston Chandler, as a matter of fact.
I'm sorry, I fucked that up. Christian Chandler.
So,
God
the
damn.
fabled Christian has been apprehended after some awful shit involving
Well, let's see
Zim's
how
self
far is
and
this.
Zim's self's mother.
How far would this take us off of YouTube? After fingering his own mother repeatedly, who's got dementia, and can't fight back. Um, he went into graphic detail about this with a confidant, um, and then that was relayed to others, and so he is now in jail without bail on account of incest,
Yeah,
which
with
is good, because that guy is so fucking god awful.
now we run into a peculiar situation here, where depending on now this is Virginia, right?
Is yeah, oh, let's see. Yeah, it'd have to be if it was near Ralph.
Yeah, so it's Virginia. So they're really progressive lately. So seeing as Christian has become Christine,
Oh, I know where this is going, and I fucking love it. I can't wait.
there is the very real possibility that this the quote unquote dimensional merge will result in Christine Chandler ending in a land full of boyfriend free girls.
It's also possible that this will go to the U.S. Supreme Court at some point.
Yes, true.
It is a like and my guess is it'll be shut down in appellate. But supposing it happened, it is possible that you might have CNN making excuses for Chris Chan sexually abusing his mother, his disabled mother.
That's a real possibility. And wouldn't that be an excellent position to be arguing against them from? Because, I mean, we've got the whole history of Chris Chan.
It's the guy's indefensible. It's
utterly
ridiculous.
and completely. And now, that being said, there are a number of individuals that bear a lot of blame in helping build this monster.
Several doctors.
Doctors, yes. There's a particular forum that I'm not going to say another word about that, egged a lot of this on because I don't want their ire. But, when you poke a bear, sometimes a bear will roar at you, and sometimes, you just poke it enough that it just goes fucking insane.
And sometimes that bear fucks its own mother.
Yeah, sometimes it does. And here we are.
And then brags about it.
Yeah. And so here we are. And it's the internet's gotten really weird. Really, really, really weird. But I guess, I mean, this really is kind of the cherry on top to the last madness-inducing week. So, a couple of points of advice going directly forward. Stock up, because the likelihood is if you're in a blue state and you're hearing this, or if you're in a blue region,
city,
no, blue region, because I know we have Euro listeners and Canuckistani listeners. So for you poor bastards, do stock up.
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah, they're not going to be nice to you. So if you're in a blue city, blue state, blue country, blue region, stock up, get ready, and be very mindful of the programs you're provided, because just like we were talking about at the beginning of this with BlackRock and the eviction moratorium coming through, they're going to be pushing for this worldwide. So it may not be BlackRock where you live, but it's going to be something. And they're going to be working with organizations like the World Economic Forum, because we have to build back better. And this is really just
here's
a number of bricks in that wall. But yeah, please continue.
So on the mention of the word program, you sort of thought.
Sure.
So if the whole vaccine passport thing and how it's a vaccine certification, not a fucking passport. People should be pushing right now to get the actual vaccine passports that already existed before they decided to push this stupid meme. The ICVPs, International Certificates of Vaccine or Prophylaxis, or Vaccination or Prophylaxis, also called yellow cards, or the CDC yellow card, or WHO yellow card.
Oh yeah, like the ones you'd use for international travel, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
People should be pushing for that.
Well, we have a standardized system in place.
Because they have that specific purpose, and if people are using those to go into a fucking Walmart, then they can actually have a way to push back against that by saying, why do I need this? I'm not traveling outside the country. Because it also has written on it all the kinds of information you need to make the case that this really is just a piece of documentation for international travel, where it is actually legitimate. Or you could also point. I think it'd be hilarious. I wouldn't suggest ever doing this on seriously, but if you're required to use a passport to pass through the doorway to some store or outside of your own home, those doorways become ports of entry. And if those are ports of entry, then that means there's a border involved somewhere. And if that border is enclosed, then the question is, whose land is it that you'd be residing in or transiting?
Boy, that really does. That raises some very interesting, legitimate libertarian concerns. Then, like, you might just be a free man on the land.
Right. So, like,
Ironically enough.
it is, again, entirely facetious. It is something that should be brought up as a mockery of the system that is incepted it. But like, just the fact that that is a possibility to make that as and it could have weight somehow. If I was a judge, I would laugh it out the court and say, okay, the 1-800, come on now, what's your real argument thing? Uh, but like, it's something that would have to actually be considered at some level. Like, if you're making the case that there's a passport involved, then you're making the case that there's a border involved, and it's a border between what and what. You can't just say outside and inside of Walmart.
Yeah, I mean, these do require strict definitions. Or, well,
And
actually,
again,
the thing is, they would put it down without strict definitions,
oh,
but as
sure.
soon as it hits a court, it's going to require strict definitions, and things get interesting and complicated then.
So another thing is, just if you want to see if you want to see real pushback that's actually effective instead of just marching in the street and then exposing yourself to more of a risk from COVID, depending on population density, and B, potentially even exposing others, C, potentially prolonging the stupid. If you want to avoid that and do something effective, don't shop at a place that is willing to use a vaccine passport system.
Oh, yeah.
Period. Don't go.
Yeah, absolutely boycott any
Don't
place
use
that
their dollars.
that uses such a thing. Don't
And again,
don't support them. And as a matter of fact, go on your local social media, go on to your locals, go on to your next door, go on to your Yelp, and just make yourself clear and known about this kind of business.
I wouldn't even say boycott. I don't like to use that word in these kind of situations because I think that that's something that's unforgivable, or that forgiveness is going to take both time and demonstrable change. So, like, say Walmart said, I keep using them as an example, but they're not an example here. Over in England, you could say Tesco's or Tesco.
Yeah.
But like, say Walmart decided that they're going to do vaccine passports. This is not this kind of thing that you go, oh, well, I'm just going to boycott them for a week or a month or or a quarter. You just stop going there. Period.
That's what
They
I've
are
done.
no longer a business. There's no longer a business that is willing to respect you as a customer. So they are no longer a business that you need to respect as a patron. You just don't go and make it known. Like you said, go out and tell people why you're not going and that you're not going.
And feel free to be loud about it.
Yeah,
Feel
exactly.
free.
As far as the boycott part goes, make the part where you announce to the world why you're avoiding such a shitty company the boycott part of it, but make the rest of it a permanent lifestyle change. This is the difference between, like, say, a fad diet and then getting healthy. Just cut that kind of shit out of your life. Find alternatives. If there's no alternative, that is a business opportunity waiting to happen.
Sure enough.
And,
Well, I mean,
people who are vaccinated also don't want this shit to happen. I'm one of those people, by the way. So, and I think, Evans, I think at this point you're one of those also vaccinated and don't want a vaccine passport that you'd have to lug around town. It's so stupid. Like, it's a personal medical thing. If a company wants to ask you that kind of information and they have no, what I would say, legitimate reason to know it, then they can fuck off.
oh, absolutely.
And I think
they have no
even
right
if,
to that
like,
information. They have the
even
right
if
to
this-
ask, but they don't have the right to get an
Oh, yeah.
answer.
And at the same time, they have the right to tell you not to go into their store, which you should absolutely respect. But I think at the same time, like, even if it's an optional question, if they're asking me, I don't think I'm going to go to that place because that seems like a prelude to making it a requirement.
Yeah, no. Don't give your money to these people. Don't give them your money or your time.
It's in the same vein. So you saw it with NFL, NBA, etc. It's make go get broke a thing. It just absolutely should be a thing. For these, this is distinctly politicization that is occurring. You don't need to have a vaccine passport or whatever, a vaccine certificate. For a company can make the store safe for people regardless of vaccination status. And they're going to have to eventually anyway because there are people who can't get vaccinated, period. And they're going to start asking them, well, do you have a medical exemption? Now you need to prove that to a fucking company? I don't think so. Or how about this? You say you got naturally acquired immunity. You got sick with COVID, and then you're fine now. You got to tell a company, oh, I don't need the vaccine. I got sick already. I'm fine. Then they might start asking you stupid questions like, well, when was your last PCR? Are you shedding? Now, for an airline, all these things kind of make sense.
Kind of.
But given the way that but again,
they intuitively make sense. But then if the airline's a perfect example of this, because you think about it.
Yeah.
Just right. This is the midwit thing. Like the not so smart guys like, I don't know about this. Or the not so smart guys like, it's fine. The midwit guys like, well, when we think about this and that they're all in the tube and everything else, I don't know. But then you get the top level thinker that says, well, actually, we consider this a positive pressure vessel. We have pressure coming from the top to the bottom that actually these, despite the fact that they are sealed tubes, they are in fact some of the most safe places in the world right now for people with COVID to travel. Ironically enough.
Somewhat.
Well, I mean,
if you have the air vent open above your face, pointed slightly towards the aisle, you got a good argument.
Well,
as long as you're on,
as long as
you're on the window seat.
Well, yeah, window seat's always, yeah. Well.
Anyway, so the point here being, like, given what we were just talking about earlier with regards to herd immunity and so on.
Sure.
At the same point, like, there should be no question, like, there's no real question about what the requirements should be, because they should have been the requirements still to date, because we haven't ever hit herd immunity. And even by serology estimates from surveillance serology on the possibility for immunity in the population, we've never been anywhere near herd immunity. Like, you could make an argument that there's maybe by surveillance, you can make an argument that there's somewhere between like 30 and 60% immunity in the population as of a couple months ago. But that's nowhere near the threshold that's needed. And, the more transmissible the disease becomes, the higher the threshold of the population that you need to achieve. For measles, it's 95% or so of the population that you need in order to get herd immunity. 90 to 95%. Which is pretty close to what it's actually at. It's a little over 95% of the population that is vaccinated against measles. And a lot of that 5% that's left over is people who have medical complications. But a healthy portion of that 5% is also assholes or unfortunate children of assholes.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, yeah, and then, of course, I lump in religious exemptions with the medical exemption, by the way. There's legitimate medical issues, and then there's legitimate religious reasons. Yeah, actually, on that vein, so something I got an email from Gab about, Andrew Torba.
Yeah, I noticed you talking some shit about Andrew about that.
Yeah, he went past the line. And I'll explain briefly why on that. It's not that, and this is concerning the military. So our service members are getting a mandate basically, and you can see why. They are told to take all kinds of other prophylactics and vaccines, etc., as part of their service. Why this one in particular is different is bonkers.
Well,
and
that depends on like, what you think.
Not just like
all that.
Yeah, but not just the ones that are like classical or old tech, etc. They take all kinds of new shit too, and they are oftentimes people that are put in through trials, so voluntarily too, mind you. So it's.
Oh, I've got a buddy that's. I've heard some interesting stories about that. I have a friend who has a vaccine that they deny exists, but he's got the paperwork of it.
Right. Sure. Shit happens all the time. So, like, if you go over to the Middle East, you're loaded up on malarial prophylactics. Just, it is what it is. if you head outside of the U.S. and over towards Africa, Middle East, Europe, or Asia, basically anywhere, realistically anywhere outside of the U.S. that isn't like Canada or the UK, you're gonna get some kind of malarial prophylactic as a service member. Maybe Japan, you're probably gonna be fine there too. I don't know if they issue them there. But certainly, if you're doing any tours over the Middle East, you're given all kinds of prophylactics. So the SARS vaccines that failed from China, well, eventually there were other SARS vaccines that were created that were functional. Those are used as prophylaxis. MERS, same thing. So, like this kind of stuff does happen.
Well, anyway, why don't you explain what's
Yeah.
what's going on and what's got your ire here with him anyway?
So it's not just so he was providing for a religious exemption, which I think is legitimate. But then he goes an extra step further and provides not just ways to game the system if you're vaccine hesitant or you're being obstinate, which is totally up to you outside of the military in this case. It's a volunteer service. If you don't want to take the vaccine, you feel that strongly about it, leave the service. Just don't do it.
And honestly, now is probably one of the better times to find yourself out of the service. It's not a fan of you if you're a fan of the U.S.
Yeah, there's that too. Well, that's the problem. That's the catch-22 is if you thin out all the sane people, then you're only left with the blue-haired crazies defending the country.
Well, perhaps, a
Well,
crushing
unless
defeat.
you find out you find the 3%, right? So the thing that pissed me off is the part where then there's additionally provided practical reasons why it's not even necessary, and that immediately goes to anti-vax. Like that is no longer like that's not even gaming the system to take advantage of religious exemptions. Just to get out of getting a shot. That is actively being against vaccines. It's a vaccine. He's against it. Like, and this is a vaccine, as in there is the option of getting the Janssen vaccine. It's bullshit. It's anti-vax and it's bullshit. And he might have some backward ass justification for it. It doesn't matter. It's past the line. That's replace COVID with measles at that point, and he's an asshole.
Yeah, I guess I can see where you're coming from.
Like,
But
there's a pretty fine line there between do what you want, there should be an option for you, and don't get it because there's no reason to get it. Like there's a line there, and he crossed it.
maybe. I mean, it's his
That
right
doesn't mean
to.
like he
It's
should go
his
to
right
jail
to
or
do.
anything. He shouldn't go to jail or anything. But like at the same time, I'm going to point it out if I see it.
That's fair.
I was getting shit for that. It's like I'm sorry, but he said it.
Well,
Tough shit,
I can't really take much issue with that. I mean, as long as
And then
you're
I had
not,
people come into the conversation with me that totally expected me to just be some, lefty nutball, ended up agreeing with me at the end. It's like, yeah, and then you see here's where he said this, and it's, yeah, I see that. Yeah, that's right. That's the problem. If you don't want to say something about that when you see it, that's also your right. You don't have to. I just thought that getting that in my fucking email inbox, seeing that from Gab, of all places, it's like, he has the right to say it. He can send me the email. I can absolutely talk about it.
that's fair. I got no issue with that. I will say the guy too. He's a little bit bombastic, and he seems to have
He's
a bit
also
of
a
a
cunt.
short temper.
He's also a cunt. I told you about the whole thing with Goddard's getting on to Gab and how that went down.
I don't think you did.
Oh, no, that was fun. I made the account, and then Lisa got on there. I hadn't gotten her the password yet, and Andrew Torba, who basically made Gab to get away from the Epeen sucking horror story that is Twitter, decided to suck some Epeen the moment that Godfrey Elfwick arrived at Gab. and he took the account from me and gave it to Lisa. And I tried to DM him about this, and unfortunately, this is when the DMs would die after 24 hours. So beyond like a screenshot I have buried somewhere, there really isn't any record of this any longer, unless of course he was lying about that and they have the records backed up. So that's again a little catch-22 that kind of sticks in the craw. But he was a bit of a cunt to me about it, basically saying at the end, well, it got to where it was supposed to be, blah blah blah. It's not. The whole point is that you're not supposed to be that guy anymore. It's not supposed to be Twitter 2.0.
Yeah.
But it turns out it is. And that was like from the very fucking start of Gab. It's been like that. So that whole freewheeling thing, like, Dissenter, I think is hilarious, especially given the way that Gab started. It's all the same shit, and it is what it is. It's already it's done. Like, I'm not gonna, I wouldn't go after the guy for this kind of shit. But at the same time, like, if you're going to Gab expecting a wholly different kind of treatment, it's a different crowd that are the Twitterati on Gab. That's all. That's the big difference. It's a different group of people that get the power there.
True. Now, that said, you probably won't get banned as easily unless you're posting porn.
Or unless you decide to make an account, unless you decide to make an account for the character that you participate in on another platform, and then another member of your group goes and tries to make the account, and then they rip it from you and then hand it to the other person.
That's a possibility.
It was claimed that it was like impersonation or name squatting or whatever. It was some bullshit justification, and it's like, no, I'm also that guy too.
Well, that's...
It's like, and do you have proof of this? Well, yeah, I have this screen cap of our alts, and no, I don't have access to it immediately because it just got fucking suspended. So it was a known asshole move. Like the guy knew I couldn't get in to get another screenshot of me inside the account. He knew that there were multiple people that were running the account, and he had to have some inkling that I was one of them by the time I got done with the conversation with him. And he just genuinely fucked up, and instead of owning that, he decided to try and make excuses and then make it somehow my fault. I'm not the one who ripped an account from one person and handed it over to another because I was looking to suck some meme peen. That was all him.
I will say, so he's a very short-sighted kind of guy sometimes.
So,
I've actually seen that in some of his interactions. He's
it's already happened.
To do things.
I can see, I know he's bombastic, etc. I can see how he would have how he could have seen things slightly different, etc. And again, with the email, I can see where he's coming from, kind of. And then I can also see where he steps over the line, and I'm not expecting him to give a rat's ass about what I'm saying right now.
No, and the odds of him even hearing this are not the highest. But, who knows?
Quite frankly, I'm not seeing like anybody else should be given too much concern to this either if you're on Gab. But point being, again, that if you're looking to find something that's significantly different from Twitter in terms of the power dynamic, it's just a different set of people at the top on Gab. Same exact kind of thing. You have the inside crew. You have you have your checkmark class.
Indeed, you do. So that's it. You should follow us both on Minds. Same usernames. That Fake Guy Dan and GregBob99.
Oh man!
If you want a genuinely superior and more old school Twitter style experience, Minds is the place to go. Not brought to you by Minds. I am available.
Right.
For a nominal fee.
Or go to a federated system like Poast, POAST, POA.st rather.
Oh, you can find us on Telegram as well. There is
true.
There's going to be a link in the thing below if you actually want to look us up there. Or if you want a link to the Discord, that's fine too. Because if I've got a listener out there and you're not on the Discord, I would love to have you in here so you could more easily ask questions and interact. So do get in touch.
So I don't know if you've this is more inside baseball talk than show talk, but like I don't know if you saw how we set it up in GGP, the other server.
No,
How
I've
like you can have like a public and you can make kind of public and kind of private setup by your actually clearly you've already figured it out somewhat because you have like the on-air and hangout lockdown
yeah, I've
by
got some things figured out, but I still don't know my way around Discord really well enough to do quite all
so you
that
can do that kind of
I
thing as
need
well
to.
with permissions and the label of ranking and so on, like the roles. Um, you can pretty well barrier off the the private stuff or like the inside stuff from general public if you want to make like a general public area.
Well, that's basically what
But
exists right now in our server. I've got a
right,
general area,
somewhat, yeah.
and if you want to do, well, the main gatekeeping is
So
it's just us that can send out the invites, so they only go to
yeah,
select individuals until we get things
well, so
more
that was the
locked down
reason
and a
I
little bit
was
more professional.
right. That was the reason I was bringing that up. Is right now it's not going to be a link in the description of any wherever you find this, but potentially in the future it will be, right? As the end, I think the ultimate goal for the Discord server is to make that a possibility.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I want this to be a
Yeah,
little bit more live and a little bit more interactive
yeah.
because it's just a more fun experience, and you get a better radio show vibe when you're live
Hmm.
with people.
Another one, server that actually does pretty well with this by overall structuring is Carl Benjamin's server. So Sargon of Akkad's server.
I can
Um,
believe that. He's been doing this for some while.
it's funny. Actually, I went to dinner the other night with so I had a friend in town, and so me and a couple other guys we went to dinner together, and I found out that one of them is actually a regular watcher of Ethan's kill streams.
Hmm.
Because so Nora came up in conversation. I think it was because my skin's darker than hers still,
Huh.
which is always funny because I piss her off with that so much. Like I spent like a decade inside getting like whiter, and you can see like my undergrad pic. I'm definitely tanned from being outside in the Florida summer. And it's like, Nora, I'm darker than you in this picture, and she gets pissed. Like, I'm not white.
Ah, that's funny.
Then I come back down to Florida recently. I brown myself back up. And I sent her a picture saying, "Hey, Nora, guess what? That's definitely what happened. I brought that up, and one guy says, "What's the last name on that?" And so that's why I found out that he had been, I guess, a listener of Ethan's.
Hmm.
So it's just funny because I talked about Sargon just there. It was funny I got to bring that up. Like yeah, all these other people that we had in on our streams in the ancient history now from 2014
Yeah, it's
onward.
kind of a small world. I mean, I
Yeah,
know for a fact we have a crossover among listeners, and I don't know if
right.
you know, but I've been on the kill stream. That was
Yes,
right
told
before
you told me that
the
before.
mundane Matt thing happened. As a matter of fact.
Right. No,
Uh,
I've been in there before too.
yeah, it's just
Well,
it's
I
a
don't. Maybe he
small
didn't call
world
it the kill
sometimes.
stream yet. I don't know if he called it the kill stream yet, but back when Nora was making him be friends with me still, or acquaintance with me,
Right.
I'd gotten onto his show a couple times. Well, I think that might have stopped after I undeleted one of. Yeah, I undeleted his drunk stream, and he was not happy about that.
Ah, that's fair. Well, at least
Yeah,
to give him
I
credit,
don't begrudge him that.
he's at least embraced all that, and he's really kind of he owns all of it anymore, instead of running from it for like a lot of other people do, So credit where it's due.
For a lot of things, I'll say yeah. I'll hold my tongue on some other bits.
Fair
Um,
enough. Fair enough.
for other people's privacy, and also not to be just
And
overly antagonistic. It's not about him.
well, sure enough, And I'll be honest, I'm still on good terms with the guys. We're acquaintances,
Right.
and I'm not
More
looking
power
to
to you.
burn any bridges with anybody. if I can avoid it. Now, that being
Right.
said, if I've got some bridges with some people still left that I haven't burned, I don't know how I missed them, but you know who you are. Anyway, I've got a couple of last things I was wanting to go over. Two of
Yeah.
them touching on Fauci and kind of really tying together. I dropped them both in the staff chat.
Oh my god, that fucking cunt.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No, you're good. So we've got them both coming out of the National Pulse because, nobody else really wants to do this reporting. But just recently, the database, the NIH database that we were able to use for quite some while, that was just obvious and direct link, like here's the money, here's where it went, here's how it was spent, yada, yada, yada. That's gone. So that has been taken offline.
Wait, what?
Yeah. The NIAID funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
The NIAID fund. Okay, yeah. So that.
Yeah, the NIH.gov database.
What the fuck? Hold on. What do they think that's going to do? Like everything, like it's all public and it's all archived, and everyone already fucking knows.
Yeah, you just dug a couple extra feet.
Not just his, but whatever they like. If they think that they're going to hide something from the date that happened backwards, it's all archived, man. It's a done deal. There is.
Yeah, it's far too late. I mean, what you're doing here is you're just basically holding up a sign saying, "Hey, look at this."
And furthermore, it can be FOIA'd. Like right now, they basically begged, like just who the fuck's the guy who goes on like Fox and shit every once in a while? The guys who go to government accountability.
Oh, not Veritas, but
well, hell, even Veritas, like basically, it's so these kind of things can be like, anywhere between like $2,000 and $5,000, depending on like the extent of the search that's required or
Sure.
the effort that's needed. It can actually become a pretty penny for a FOIA, but and I keep tipping the tongue in myself on his name, so sorry if I'm sound like a babbling idiot for pausing.
No, I kind of know who you're talking about too, and I can't remember it either.
Like, he wears the fucking polo shirts. He's got the gray hair with like the short cut. God damn it. But anyway, this right here is a perfect example of a legitimate use for a FOIA. Just FOIA the fucking database and then reflect it publicly and give them the middle finger. Like if your organization has like 10 grand to spare, just file the FOIA and say that database I want it. And that's easy because then they just copy the file. So like it's not like they can have some long, horrible, drawn out thing where they have all these excuses. They can try that, but you can easily sue for that in court and get it just sent right back to them saying, yeah, you're gonna do it and you're gonna do it now. Get an injunction for relief and then tell them they have to do it. So yeah, this database that was already scoured. Like hiding it now is a petty, stupid move, and that means, in my opinion, they think they have something else to hide.
Oh, absolutely. This is absolutely kind of this is really a Barbra Streisand moment.
It's categorical. It's stupid.
Yeah, I mean you're painting a target on yourself by doing this.
Oh, and unrelated, I'm guessing unrelated Fauci news. There was that one video of him going around Twitter. He still had his accent. It just, there's just shit audio. Like, if I had to guess, like if there was an argument to be made for a realistic deepfake, that was a pretty realistic deepfake if it was one. But his accent was there, and I think it was just shitty audio. I don't think it was a deepfake. I think the connection was just crap.
I think I missed what you're talking about because that doesn't sound familiar.
There's a video going around. It might have been another one of those Pacific things. There's a video going around, and the person who tweeted the video out said, where does accent go? And he sounded like he still had his accent. It just wasn't as clear. His speech just wasn't as clear.
No.
And so my guess is that maybe one or two of the people in the audience have probably seen that. I think I commented on it on Twitter, so there's a chance they might have seen me say something.
Could be. I mean, obviously, it's not something of such great concern that it really rose to the level of much
Right.
public discourse. So,
But again, well, basically there's the one tweet saying, "Where does the accent go?" And then everybody underneath replying, "It's there, man."
well, fair enough. And one other thing I do want to kind of jump back to real
Yeah.
quick as I'm just considering it. Something you mentioned with that, to anyone who's hearing this that is vaccine hesitant, I completely understand, and I am actually kind of with you on the mRNA vaccines. But please, 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 please consider the Janssen vax from Johnson & Johnson. I'm not telling you to get it. I'm not going to hold it against you for not getting it. Legitimately. But if you find yourself in the situation that you must become vaccinated or you must fight, and you don't want to fight, there is an option that is legitimately safe coming from a hyper skeptical individual regarding this particular technology. So
And
take that for what it's
and
worth.
this and not even saying that this is going to be balancing things, because I would say that in the balance we've done pretty well already in the past. I'll make the same kind of argument, in many fewer words here, that Pfizer is, of the two mRNAs, Pfizer is probably the one to go with. It's what I went with. Um, it's in my opinion, has the better safety profile between it and Moderna. That both have, in my opinion, good safety profiles, consistent with any other vaccine, really. Um, so I would say that all three of them are fine. They're all great options to go with.
I would say they're
Some
not, but
people
you
are.
know. But I
More
do endorse
importantly,
one. So,
more
take that for
importantly,
what it's worth.
more importantly, both of us will agree on this. You should go and talk to your doctor before you go and get a vaccine.
If you
Make
have a
sure that you
doctor.
can get a vaccine. Make sure
If you don't
if
have
you
a
have a
doctor,
doctor,
please, please
try to
do
find one.
thorough research. Well, maybe you're a
Try
person like
try
me
to see
that
one.
kind of doesn't trust doctors. Do
Right.
your research, do it thoroughly, make sure you actually understand what you're looking into, and take it from folks a little bit wiser than us that can give you real answers about these things.
So what I would say is, if you don't have a doctor, or if you have a doctor, I would say, obviously do your research first. If you got a doctor to go see, or you can schedule with if there's like a doc in the box that's like going to take the time because you're paying for it, then show up and have your concerns. Like, say, hey, look, I want to talk about vaccines. I'm not so sure. There's this family history, of these certain circumstances. How are these going to affect things? The medical term for not being able to do something is contraindicated. So you can say, doctor, are there any contraindications for any of these vaccines for me? And say, here are these concerns I have. Can we go through them? And it might take you one or two appointments to get through that. But if you find the right doctor, then you'll get your concerns addressed. But more importantly, it's about your personal health. This is a personal health decision. It never should be public health is an aggregate thing. It should never be a personal imposition. So it is your personal health. You should be self-actualized in defending it and taking care of it. So I would say seeing a doctor is the right thing to do, to make sure that you're not going to get, like, if you have any family history or concerns, you should talk to a doctor to make sure that you've got the right ideas going forward, so that you don't unnecessarily expose yourself to an enhanced risk of a bad reaction, because reactions do happen, and there is a fraction of the population that cannot be vaccinated, and unfortunately some of those people find out while they're being vaccinated. And it's not very many people. We're talking about like less than 100 a year, but it's still a thing that happens.
Or if you've got cancer risks, that
Yeah.
seems to be that's actually, I'm noticing a pattern with that. A lot of
Well,
people with cancer, recovering from cancer, or in treatment for cancer,
Well,
are
that involves
seeing a lot of like caution involving that. And
So here's the thing.
if you are in that group, you have a doctor, talk to them about this.
Yeah. So if you're in that group, it's not just that there's the potential for a complication with cancer being involved. It's usually you're immunocompromised to some degree, and you're probably not. It's if you're not going to get a reaction. So if you get a bad reaction from, say, drug combinations or what have you, that's one thing to consider. But the other possibility is that you will simply not develop immunity from it, which would be bad. And if you're taking a live virus vaccine like the Janssen vaccine, which is based on adenovirus, then you also have the possibility of making yourself really sick with something that you should not be getting really sick from. Like
And
that is taking a live virus instead of just the instructions for a little piece of a virus. So that means you could actually make yourself really sick from a, a real live virus that's trying to kill you.
yeah,
Well,
that
to a
could
degree.
result in a very strange thing as well, because
Yeah.
it being a genetically modified adenovirus, to have these spike proteins, I can imagine that's not something you would want to be infected with. So again, if you're in that position, you have a doctor. Make sure that you speak with them at length about it.
Yeah, and
It could
it's
save your
your
life.
time at the doctor. If it's your doctor, it's your time with your doctor that you're paying for. So, up to a reasonable limit, assert yourself politely and make sure that your concerns are addressed. Or, come back for another appointment if you have to. But make sure you're not going in blind, I think is my advice. And again, my other advice, and I'm still resolving certain other issues involving this. My other advice is to get a follow-up antibody test well after when you're supposed to have your full immunity. Get the antibody test, check to see, did it work? Do you have the antibodies that are consistent with immunity? And and there's also there's a possibility that you might not have sufficient in circulation at the time for a positive on one of the two in the titer, but like if you get at least one of the two, you're probably gonna be good, and you shouldn't have IgM. Well, suffice to say, you should get the antibody test just to see if it worked, and
And
then talk
beyond
to your
that,
doctor about that.
you'll be answering that conspiratorial question of did I get a saline injection? Well, you'll know.
Right. Well, there's also the possibility. So if you haven't gotten the antibody test prior to the vaccination, getting one afterwards leaves it ambiguous. So if you really think that you had, say, the possibility of acquired immunity, and actually acquired immunity prior to a vaccination, and you want to know that for certain, then you got to do things in the right order.
That
But
being
then
said,
that,
actually,
that makes you more like
that's a
a
very
PC power user.
well. That's actually a really important point you're making. We should probably touch on it for just a quick second before we move on.
Sure.
Because if we look at the study that just came out of, damn it. Okay, I will link it because we talked about it in the last show. But the study that just came out, that is basically saying that if you've got your T cells, if you've got a natural immunity from this, that it might be wiser not to go ahead and get vaccinated. You could be looking at potential issues.
So we didn't want to length about that, I think, last time, right?
Yeah, indeed we did. So
okay, good.
So if you think you've been sick and you're thinking about getting the vaccine,
I would absolutely get the antibodies test as a bare minimum just to see if you have the acquired immunity.
Yeah, and not only that, you're going to be able to use this to say you've got your employer or whatever, like, hey, listen, the studies are saying this. This isn't even an approved thing. It's emergency approval. I've already been sick. Here you go. I've got the antibodies. The science is out on whether it releases, whether an immune natural person or a person that's got, artificial immunity by way of one of these vaccines has more or less shedding. By the way, it appears that that's actually exactly the same. If you are shedding any vaccines on, or not vaccines, shedding antibodies.
Yeah, you're not shedding vaccines. to interject briefly there, the virus that's being shed, so that hasn't necessarily been so. Just SARS-2 CoV or SARS-CoV-2 that has been determined that if there's or in my estimation it looks like it's reasonably determined that there's approximately equivalent viral shedding and viral loading, but that doesn't account for any difference in variant or lineage. So it's entirely possible that a person who's been exposed to wild type, that would be the original. If you ever hear them talk about wild type virus, they mean original SARS-2 virus. They don't mean like some other new thing or whatever. It's the one they encountered in the wild type.
Or in this case, basically, we'd be talking about kind of the alpha strain.
Well, no, so there is an alpha variant that is not the wild type. That's the problem with this stupid system that the
Really?
WHO decided
Okay,
to
well,
impose. Yeah.
Ugh.
I know.
Well, actually,
It's fucking dumb.
that is a valid point, though, because actually what would be the true alpha type has probably been destroyed in China.
Well, I think that it's circulated around a lot of the planet, and it's certainly not the dominant strain now. But I think that there's maybe a small background of it, but it's probably mutated out of existence because it's been selected out by different selection pressures, certainly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But so the lineage for the shed virus was not correlated in study, so at least not to my reading yet. So that would be interesting to see because I while you can theoretically, having been vaccinated, shed virus that you've been exposed to. Remember we talked about that numbers game that happens in the first couple of days, and there's maybe a little bit of lag as your immune system catches up.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible to asymptomatically shed virus while vaccinated. And again, at herd immunity, there's about 3 hops on average before extinguish.
Well, we look at
extinguishing happens.
at the high efficacy of the mRNA vaccines. Just looking at the numbers, it's not 100%.
Oh yeah.
So
Absolutely.
there's that 3%, that 5%, that 6%, whatever percent. It's going to happen anyway.
The efficacy is going to continue to drop as the variants distance further away from the original virus. That's just the way it works. And the way to stop it from getting so distant prior to herd immunity, when it can quench and no longer become a circulating virus, which limits the mutations significantly. You'll notice that the MMR doesn't have to be given every year, every few years. It's given like the once. It's because the circulating volume of virus is so low that mutations do not have a chance to achieve a threshold for infectivity in others. Like you can't.
Well, just like why we're not
overcome herd
immunizing
immunity at that
people
point.
for polio or smallpox anymore.
Right. So, so outside of the U.S., they still vaccinate for polio.
Sure.
Just but inside the U.S., you're not going to be vaccinated against yellow fever, typhus, cholera, the plague, etc. Like these things, you don't need to have prophylactic or vaccination for because we wiped them out using prophylaxis and vaccination. So, like the way to stop the variants from getting out of the vaccine coverage so quickly is to limit the overall volume of circulating virus, and that doesn't really doesn't happen effectively until coincidentally around herd immunity, which is when you also are protecting the people that can't get vaccinated, or worse yet, the people who are vaccinated who do not retain immunity. Those are the people who are completely screwed because they think, unless they tested for it after the fact, they think they're covered, not realizing that they're not immune. So that's the group that's completely screwed over, but it's a small enough percentage if you get a high enough coverage that it's not going to be much of an issue. Again, at herd immunity. So it's the way to stop those variants from becoming problems is to stop them from developing really in the first place.
And true
You know,
enough.
and it sounds Sisyphean, but we eradicated smallpox from the planet. Period. We eradicated polio in the country, yellow fever in the country, all these other things in the country. We can do the same thing for. We can eradicate malaria for only for less than $10 billion. So look up Bjorn Lomborg. We've talked about him previously when it came to climate change, and looking at the cost benefit analysis. He pissed off a lot of people by doing a cost benefit analysis on 10 major problems facing the human race. And one of them, of course, was infectious diseases. All right, so what are the infectious diseases we could eliminate? Turns out for less than $10 billion, we could eliminate malaria. I mean,
Well,
and you could
that's
probably
kind of
tack
big.
on you could probably tack a zero on if you wanted to, just for safe accounting. But this is the disease that is responsible by itself for the death of over half of all humans that have ever lived. Just to put that in context.
Yeah, that would be kind of a
So if
big
we
thing to get rid of.
so if we can get rid of now, I have other friends with their various biases that think that getting rid of a disease that prevents overpopulation of the earth by undesirable people is already a bad idea. But that's why they have their problems and I don't. Um, but yeah, we could get rid of malaria. We've gotten rid of smallpox. We've got inside just this. So yellow fever, by the way, remains a problem in I think it was like 3 or 5 South American countries. Only some small parts of a couple of those countries, so a couple other countries in South America, and then like just Africa covered as a total for recommendations on travel, but only parts of Africa. Yellow fever is almost eradicated. Like, which is that'll be another one next to smallpox that will be eradicated and done with, and that'll be awesome.
No, sure enough.
Zika is one of the targets for mRNA vaccines coming. So they have a whole bunch of targets for mRNA coming up that are going to be able to take out things on that list of top 10 infectious disease that you want to get rid of, like the Big Ten list. A bunch of them are going to be targeted soon, and again, not using mRNA technology, just using standard like probably prophylaxis is the majority of it, and then probably mosquito control or just enhanced mitigation measures like netting homes and such. Um,
In other words, we don't have
less
to
than
use creepy genetically engineered Gates branded mosquitoes
sure,
because
but
they're
for like
creepy.
but using that older technology, less than $10 billion was what Bjorn Lomborg came up with. Like it was like $8 or $9 billion. That's on a world scale. That's pennies.
Oh yeah, that's a pittance. Well, I mean,
We're,
how what we're
on
looking
the
at?
world scale, we talk about trillions.
Well, I'm speaking of trillions. I mean, just looking at the current spending bill, the one that they're putting through together
Sure, yeah.
without the reconciliation bullshit, they're putting through like a 1.6 or 1.9 trillion dollar spending bill for our infrastructure, which honestly, yes, is needed. So this is going to be a win
Oh yeah.
for shitty people. They're going to be able to claim this
Well,
thing that we've desperately needed for a fucking while.
here's the problem. I don't think that they're going to do it right
Oh no, they
because
fuck everything up, so they're going to fuck this up too.
so we need to spend on infrastructure. My problem is going to be they're going to bring in union orgs. They're going to way overspend on shit. It's going to come in all way over budget, and they're going to be asking for another $10 trillion. I bet you.
Well, maybe they can dip into that fucking six that they're wanting to use for the quote unquote human infrastructure, which is some of the dumbest bullshit
Oh
I've
my
ever heard.
fucking god, that was
Fucking
amazing.
human
Healthcare is infrastructure. No, it
Child
fucking
care is
isn't.
infrastructure. Suck my dick. It is not.
Look, hospitals are infrastructure.
Yeah. Oh,
Healthcare
yeah.
is not
Okay.
infrastructure.
Yeah, I can. There you go. Yeah, healthcare. Nah. The hospital just being there, yes, because you got to have that emergency room. You got to have those ambulances. You don't
Like,
necessarily have to have everybody go. The thing about it is, if you need emergency care anywhere in the United States of America, even without coverage, you can and will receive it.
Oh, you will. You'll be on triage, but everyone goes through triage in the ER. So even people with coverage go through triage. And they don't do triage based on your coverage. They do triage based on severity of injury
Yeah,
or
that
disease
that
or
is
whatever.
literally the purpose of triage, is to make sure that the ones that need the care the most are given the care the most.
And so, yeah, at the end of it, you might go home with a shit medical bill, but you're going to get treated wherever you go
And if
in a
you're
public hospital.
and another thing too, if you're one of those bottom of the barrel people, like honestly, I kind of am. If I have to go in, I know I can go in, and I know that there are programs that I can apply to and get this taken care of because I legitimately don't have the means to take care of it. So if I have to get this
Yeah.
done, I can get it done, and it will be covered.
So so hospitals, all hospitals that treat patients are going to get a certain amount of money per bed in the hospital for treating the patients that go through the bed. So they want high occupancy, generally speaking, and they want high throughput in order to get money to cover what was done in those beds, because not all patients are going to cost the same. But unfortunately, even with the adjustments that the government has put into place for going up and down on severity for helping to cover the more severe cases, that's still not going to cover everything. So, tax dollars do go to hospitals to cover beds occupied. And part of that cost that is covered, and this is largely with more of public hospitals, part of that cost that is covered by state and federal taxes, state and federal money, rather, is people who can't pay. There is always going to be a fraction of the population that cannot pay in hospitals. And people who can pay and their insurance largely also subsidizes that. So tax dollars and people who have insurance or people who can pay will subsidize ultimately, just because that's the way the budget has to be balanced. Ultimately, will subsidize people who can't pay. So if you go in and you get treated for something rather heinous that has a huge expensive treatment for it that resolves and you come out the other end of it and you're okay, you're getting back on your feet, and you end up having to file for bankruptcy to get out of the medical bills. However that ends up resolving itself, or they say there's a program, what have you. If ultimately the hospital doesn't get paid, if they're going to get payment from these other revenue streams. So
The money has to
in the
come from
U.S., you will
somewhere.
money not just has to come from somewhere, it will come from somewhere, and the hospital will continue to survive as a hospital. The person who had to get treated got treated. At the end of the day, the hospital will continue because people will pay at some level. And if you really do need to get treated, you will get treated if you go to a hospital. So just the way if you end up not being able to pay it, you end up not being able to pay it. It sucks.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
That
I mean,
probably
we don't
impacts
have debtor's prison
probably
anymore.
impacts the credit score.
But yeah, I mean, you're not going to jail. You're just going to have to suck it up for a while.
Yeah. So not everybody say in the progressive stack is progressive arena is going to be wholly aware of that possibility. Like say the AOCs of the world, that 21 odd million Americans weren't insured, but still were getting treated if they had some kind of illness.
Yeah,
They had
I
to go to
mean,
the ER.
think about all these homeless people on the street that are legitimately not there of their choice. These people that are damaged and broken and have fallen through the cracks. They still get sick. And when they're capable of controlling themselves to the degree of going to the hospital, they go to the hospital and they get help. And they are helped.
Yeah.
Now, when a person
And
is beyond
oftentimes
help,
that even helps them.
sometimes they're even taken in by the ones who can help them in that community because they can't help themselves, and they get that help because it is there and it will be provided. And a lot of these people forget that these things exist and that we do actually try and help people. Sadly, we forget this. No, it's actually kind of good that we try and help people. Obviously, I would hope that's obvious. Jesus. Speaking of
again, yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was going to segue into the other piece, but go ahead.
No, no. Well, we should probably get it done because I'm an hour and 15 minutes past what I wanted to go to bed here.
Oh, geez, your feet are probably already half turned into pumpkins by now. All right, so we'll get this last one in here. And that just ties into the one from before. The NIH director and Fauci, we've basically got a link to them with the Chinese military by way of
I bet.
COVID-19. Another one
Oh, boy.
So Francis Collins, Dr. Francis Collins of the NIH, apparently still serves aboard a conference sponsored by some Chinese, some CCP-linked genomics firm, and above and beyond the fact that they are linked and ahead of this, there's a lot of data that has gotten to the Chinese military. A lot of American genetic data. A whole lot. Like maybe terabytes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's somewhat terrifying, actually.
So here, just to give people an idea, so you have what 3.5 billion base pairs. Your DNA, like your in-depth full DNA analysis, like all the letters read out, your full DNA sequencing will fit on a 500 gig hard drive. And that is typically what is delivered from these services that have, I think we've gotten roughly, we can say we haven't gotten below a $1,000 sequencing, but we're like at a couple $1,000 sequencing at this point, which oftentimes with the right coaxing with the doctor is covered by insurance. So again, depending on condition. So that's usually how it's delivered to you and your doctor is on a 500 gig hard drive, just or thumb drive or what have you these days.
No,
so when you say terabytes, a terabyte's two people for full sequencing. But if we're talking about just like single nucleotide perturbations, SNPs,
well,
which
a lot
is
of the data, we don't know exactly what all data they have.
Well, just
is the thing.
Point being, like, this is what like 23andMe kind of services run on is chips that look for SNPs.
Sure.
That's 25,000 base pairs that you're looking at, not 3.5 billion.
Okay, so that's going to be significantly smaller.
So a terabyte is significantly many more people at that point. Yes.
So I guess it depends on the data sets, and
So
also
my presumption here is that they're probably got things like SNP data that was collected, or there's probably
a little bit of everything. In all honesty,
there's plenty of that kind of stuff that, like, if they're advising Chinese military proxies or proxy linked group, fine. All right, so this is working alongside COVID-19 gene storage firm, blah blah blah. Okay, BGI Genomics, Chinese National Gene Bank. Yeah. So by the way, China does full, like, at this point, I think they do full sequencing on their whole population at birth. So that's fucked up. Like,
well,
on the one hand, it's fantastic if you need like a liver transplant.
Well, another thing I mentioned this for, I don't know. Well, this kind of ties in. I'll just drop the link to the one out of Reuters, but
okay.
Basically,
that's weird. It didn't make the link.
Yeah, that's odd. Well, anyway, it. Oh,
copy.
Let me just
pasta.
There, fixed.
Yeah, that was it.
Weird. Okay, well, anyway, I'll have a link to this, but it also kind of ties in.
Oh, yeah, this is the one I've seen this one before.
Yeah,
so
I failed to kind of tie that together, so yeah, I'll have a link to this as well out of Reuters.
That's why it's BGI. That was LinkedIn. Got it. Yeah.
So, in addition to all this, like this is actually kind of two separate data sets that are actually facing theft.
Yeah,
if I'm being honest.
It is separate.
So there's another whole thing on top of this where China's been just sucking up data from mothers that have been sending in their genetics for testing. And
so BGI does this thing, so that looks for trisomy in fetuses, and so BGI has a non-invasive test. It's branded as NIFTY, so non-invasive fetal trisomy. with the Y capitalized. Um, so this involves looking at the genes of the infant, or well, of the not infant, the fetus. Um, and to do that, so you don't have to sequence the genome to do that. You're getting, but it is considered genetic information if you have trisomy or not. But um, you can karyotype a fetus from that kind of information. So that's like the sexual characteristic on a human karyotyping in that regard would be XX or XY or any of a variety of disorders. Uh, it's like Klinefelter's being XXY or XYY.
Sure.
So those are much more rare, but like typically you're going to see XX or XY. Um, and so that kind of information is still considered genetic information. That's not even like your 25,000 SNP sites that are like, sorry, common SNP sites or your full sequencing, let alone the exosome for the genome, exogenomics. So that includes like the proteome for your proteins or your protein expressions, etc. So there's a wide variety of stuff beyond the just the base sequence to tell you stuff about the genes, like how they're being expressed to be, whether or not they're methylated, acetylated, or left open, or the arrangement within. But yeah, they get all this information. Basically, what China's been doing with the data, at least what they've publicly been specifying, is that they've been able to look at humans in a more big data sense, which, from a population standpoint is interesting because, we do this with all kinds of farm animals. That's how you got the super cows. The extra muscly cows or the cows that produce extra milk.
Sure.
All that is these days done at the gene level. Same thing with chickens, depending on the kind of farm you're running. A lot of farms will do full sequencing, or they'll be doing recombination to get the kinds of chicken lineages that they want. I mean, this kind of thing. So China is looking at humans this way, not necessarily acting on it in public.
Well,
But
actually, if we look
that's
at
kind
their
of the
stated super
logical
soldier
step.
programs, we can probably draw a very clear line. I
Well, so
mean,
the
if
thing is,
even if that
it's the
line
next
isn't,
logical step.
well, we know they're working on super soldier programs. They have stated as
Yeah,
much, and
but
with leaks as well.
the thing is that from a purely is it purely based on a lineage eugenics approach, or is it based on designer baby approach? And one could argue that with enough data and enough information about the long-term health of populations from that data. And remember, if you have enough people that you have data on, you don't need data from every day of their life to get a picture of what every day of the life of a person of a typical type of person would be like in terms of the overall health and capabilities of that kind of person. You need a lot of people to do that. And if you have a test like this, which does, say, the trisomy thing, that means you already get the data on the person before they're born. Some ideas of what they're going to be like, and then as they grow, if you get any more data on them, that just ties in for predictive purposes on your model. So it's entirely plausible that they have the capacity at this point to predict somewhat reasonably. If the person shows up at age 18 for the military, that's only 18 years that they have to develop, and that's probably not wholly unreasonable to predict what they would be like having come from a certain set of two parents. What kind of muscle mass they might be able to acquire, what kind, their risk factors for certain types of diseases, and when those diseases might happen.
Mental
It
health
might be,
and
yeah.
beyond that, how they might even fall into the
People forget we're
standardized
animals too, so
categorizations,
we're
standardized
animals too.
personality categorizations. I mean, like agreeability and that sort of thing that they really want to test for somebody in their
Yeah.
military.
So humans are animals too. We're not separate from other animals in this context, and we're perfectly capable of being studied in the same way. It's just that oftentimes we consider the study of animals to be inhumane for humans, the way that we go about looking at them, and they're not our species, and that's basically why. And if that upsets someone, unfortunately, that's kind of tough shit for you. It's how our species survives. Um, but yeah, I would not put it past China to be looking at humans in the same way in terms of the big data involved. I know that um, certain people have been looking into medical information in big data ways as well, in a somewhat similar fashion, but not necessarily at the gene level. Um, and that's it. You get some interesting results out of this kind of aggregate data.
To
But
be
yeah,
sure.
I would. And there's very clearly state level interests that I think actually have a pretty significant impact on U.S. national security
Yeah,
going forward.
I kind of don't like this. I really kind of don't. That's a lot of data they've got
And,
on a lot of Americans and a lot of
well, they
American
they get
genetics.
they scour all of, like, you think the NSA is harvesting the internet. Um, Anything that China sees on the
Oh,
internet,
I
it
have no
will
doubt that if it
process.
hits a single Chinese IP, it is entirely sniffed.
Well, that's not just that. They actively will ping out. So, like, for instance, Twitter, they have a lot of bot accounts on Twitter. It's not just to promote propaganda or whatever. It's also to be able to scrape data off of Twitter. The Twitter fire hose is not pointed at China. They don't, like, I think they might have a company that has access, but they're not able to get the full log. They have to use bots to scrape. So
That makes sense.
there's a lot of accounts that just that is there to be able to get the bandwidth they need,
Hmm.
without triggering Twitter's automated shutdown of their ability to access their API, or basically use the website. So yeah,
That is an
the thing that
interesting
worries
point.
me more about this, the thing that worries me more about this than just BGI, which is a global company, to be
Sure.
fair here, they have their test is used freaking everywhere. The fact is, Francis Collins, okay, he's serves as on the advisory. Okay, so he's on the advisory board of a conference sponsored by a genomics firm linked to the Chinese military. And okay, that's Anthony Fauci's boss, I guess.
Right.
Referred to the controversial company's founder as a friend. So it is BGI Genomics that they are tied to. So Fauci's boss is tied to BGI Genomics, and the founder of BGI Genomics, who he calls a friend. Okay. Yeah, BGI also manages the conference with other sponsor,
And BGI
China
can be
National Gene
tied over to this
China
other
National
one.
Gene Bank,
Mm-hmm.
CNGB. All right. It's a gene storage project approved and funded by the Chinese government, which guarantees that they're CCP covered
Oh,
at this point.
invariably.
And my guess is that they've got more than 50 employees.
Yeah. Well, my guess is even if they don't have more than 50 employees, somebody at the
It's
party would
significant, yeah.
insist.
Or
That
they just be employed there. Yeah. Just remember, you don't have to be a card-carrying member to be a member of the party, because if you're a citizen, you are a member.
Oh, of course. Everybody's a member of the party.
It's just if you're a card-carrying member, you get benefits. Like a free steak on your 10th vote that doesn't matter.
Something like that.
Let's see, blah blah. Oh, it's fucking pop-up ads, seriously.
This is why ad blocker is great.
Yeah, and then it's in Shenzhen, which is China.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends.
So I mean, Dr. Collins is
But a lot of this
he's not as
ties.
o he's
But
not as overtly political as Fauci is, and I think part of it's because he has connections like this.
yeah, when you're dirty, you don't want people to see. And I
He
don't know
he
if you could
is.
say he's specifically
Oh,
dirty, but you could
so here's
really make
this.
some very convincing arguments.
Here's this. He does show up. He apparently shows up often on Kabuto's show, um, which is couched as anti-Trump, and this is poisoning the well. That Dr. Collins is invited to Kabuto's show as often as he is. Kabuto's politics do not necessarily reflect on Dr. Collins. That again is I think that's just poisoning the well.
Well, they're going to frame this is the National Pulse.
Fair enough.
I mean, hardly anybody else is even reporting on it, so, it is what it is. You take what you can get.
I mean, I would have the same skepticism for that kind of descriptions with CNN because they do the same shit all 24/7.
That's fair. That's fair. But I mean, but the data at least is there, and it really does back up what we're
Yeah,
talking about. I mean, to put it in simple terms, what we're saying here really is backed up, even if it is framed in a bit of a similar fashion to how it would be framed if the other side are reporting on it.
yeah. This is clearly a biased source. Again, they're all biased in some ways, and it's how they go about mitigating their bias and admitting the bias that is overt that is important here.
And at the end of the day,
National
we are
Pulse, at
presenting
least,
this
is not.
data, and we're trying to present it in a fairly down the line fashion so that you can actually make sense of
Yeah,
it. That's, I
and
mean,
I'm not
that's
I'm not
kind of
claiming
why
to be
we're here.
objective here. I don't think we've ever made the claim that we're trying to be objective necessarily, but certainly more balanced views on things is a
Oh yeah, I
better
mean, we're obviously not completely
balanced in
objective
opinion anyway.
because if we tried to be objective, I'd be probably talking about some dumb Bill Nye bullshit
Well,
about
well, there's also the idea that we're trying to apply some semblance of logic to things, so that kind of precludes progressive opinions.
yeah, largely.
So I'm not gonna. There's no balancing on that.
Yeah.
The same way, or I would be happy to talk to somebody who believes in a flat Earth, but I would be mocking them the entire time.
I will say from experience that it is difficult not to. It
And
really, really
I
is.
wouldn't necessarily be like overtly mocking them necessarily, or being, a pissant about it. But at the same time, it's really hard to take someone credulously with that perspective. Uh,
That's on
but
purpose,
it's,
right?
but it's, well, it's important to treat someone like that as being credulous to be able to engage the arguments properly. The same way that you would say it's important to do that with neo-Nazis on Twitter or white nationalists on Twitter or say anti-vaxxers on Twitter or religious fundamentalists like Ken Ham, which Bill Nye walked circles around
That
before
is
he
one of
did
the
the
saddest
fucking
things that has ever happened. Bill Nye.
like
Once upon a
like
time, you
he
believed in two genders, Bill. What happened?
yeah.
Where did it all go wrong, Bill?
Well, importantly, he believed in two sexes.
Oh, excuse me. Yes.
See, early on, gender and sex were pretty much synonymous because sex was the word everybody had always used, and then gender was brought in by a person who doesn't want to be talked about, by anybody in the transgender community anyway. But the theory, just because it's now becoming more prominent these days that there is the distinction between them, sex is the physical basis and gender is the mental basis. And on that, fine, we can agree on those definitions. But if we're going to go down that line of definitions, then they have to be actually applied as definitions. And unfortunately,
Yeah, it falls apart there because
the
it's
louder the
kind of
louder
bullshit.
people the louder people tend to not follow that line of those definitions when they talk,
Oh,
and
well,
then they
because they become
expect you
quite
to,
inconvenient.
and
Because
then
you
they
get
expect
boxed into a
you to
corner.
absolutely do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when you start following those by strictly, even if you give someone like that the opportunity to reframe and restate so that they do not make such mistakes, because we all make mistakes, they still back into a corner, and there's logical inconsistencies that need to be addressed before they can be taken seriously. After they've been taken seriously and shown to have problems.
So basically, it's a circle.
Yeah, it's important to take people credulously when they decide to start going on about something seriously. And so now, like with this kind of stuff with National Pulse, and clearly they've got their bias. Yeah, it's funny because it's kind of like Fox News bias, but it lacks a lot of the same corporate messaging. But it's definitely there still. It's not. It's also. It's not like that was the Outnumbered show that's on. Was it OANN or is it Newsmax?
Mm.
I don't remember which one it is. I think it's OANN. It's got that somewhat disagreeable blonde woman hosting it.
Yeah, funny enough, I don't actually take in any right side media either, so I legitimately don't know. I am familiar with those brands.
I see I've seen like a couple of episodes of it on YouTube, like a few years ago.
Now that said, I do support RSBN and OANN. I'm glad they exist. I don't know. I have a feeling that Newsmax is just kind of.
I lump them all in
Fox.
with MSM right now. They're all MSM. It's funny because Fox tries to other the MSM. They're definitely part of it, and the funnier thing is they're successful, more so with people on the left or on the liberal side of politics. They're far more successful with liberal left in othering themselves from the quote MSM than they are with people I find on the right who are willing to say absolutely Fox is mainstream or absolutely OANN is mainstream these days. Newsmax is mainstream. You don't have to cover 75% of your demographic of the country to be mainstream.
That's
you just
fair.
need to have.
I would say that they are mainstream.
Have a large
although
demographic.
I wouldn't say
More
they're
to the
part
right
of
or more to the
the.
left.
I wouldn't say that a number of those are actually a member of the greater media complex, if you know what I mean by that.
Well, I mean, Fox is absolutely. OANN is making inroads, and Newsmax, if it survives, will probably do the same thing.
Well, that's
RSBN will be interesting to see what happens.
Well, that's actually where I draw the line on the OANN and the RSBN. I actually agree with you entirely on Fox and Newsmax. I have zero disagreement there.
Fox was created to be a foil to CNN, and it absolutely succeeded in that regard.
And
and
I
it's been
think that
MSM
now that they're kind of taken the place of CNN, we've got the upstart here, in my opinion at least, of Newsmax set up to be that plucky young thing that'll say the right words for however long they need to say them until they're positioned in such a place that they can become the next thing. And cycle,
and here's the thing: is
can repeat.
Don't let the face fool you on OANN. I guarantee you, it's going along the same road as Fox. So Fox was not a whole lot different from OANN. You know, maybe some of the language is a little bit adjusted for being more palatable under FCC guidelines at the time. But certainly with the expanded broadcast mediums, OANN simply has a larger and I would say more technologically diverse audience than Fox News had at that size. That's
fair.
The major difference between them.
Well,
I bet you it's going to go the same road. I would absolutely classify them at this point as MSM. They have a dedicated large audience that's mainstream.
That's possible. But I guess I should be more specific in this, in that I think that Newsmax and Fox are actually organizations that have a bit of a glow to them, if you understand.
Keep in mind, I'm not the arbiter of what the definition of mainstream is here.
Oh, sure.
People who take umbrage with my definitions.
I don't necessarily disagree with you.
Your opinions.
I wouldn't necessarily say they're outside of the mainstream. I would just say that they don't have an unearthly glow, the kind of which. I
know what you're talking about.
And Fox definitely glows, and I would say that Newsmax glows a little bit. Now, OANN, maybe. RSBN, I don't think so. But
I
again, we'll
think
see. I will say
it's a
that I
matter
am
of
quite
time before
certain
that
that
happens.
I would. I'm gonna say though, I'm really sure that Newsmax glows. I'm really sure of it, especially
Well,
after the little mask
yeah.
drop incident. You know,
Uh-huh.
around the end of the year and the start of this one. You know, we saw a lot of masks drop. We really did. As some people bothered to pick them back up, and Godspeed to you. You know, bless your hearts. You went ahead and put on the mask and got back to the ruse. But we saw the mask drop, so sorry, the jig's a little bit up. And
Yeah.
I have kept you like crazy late, so I should probably let you go and
Sorry.
get to bed. And that's actually not a bad place to end. So
Okay. Yeah.
with that, look us up again. We can get you invites to the Discord. We're always happy to take any questions, any ideas for shows or whatever. You can find Craig at CraigBob99 most places. You can find me at that fake guy Dan also most places. You can find Steve at Ratman720, but just get the question to
So
us. He doesn't care about
most of the
social media
day,
anymore.
most of the day. Also, keep in mind he is locked away in his little lead bunker, being the little bitch nuclear engineer he
Yeah,
is.
he is doing
Uh,
nuclear stuff.
so he is as in the sensitive security environment that he has to operate in. Most days he will not have his cell phone with him to be able to use Twitter on, and he has to wait till he gets home at night. Which means he has to wait till after he's done spending time with his wife, which means he's not going to be spending a whole lot of time on there. He can usually tell when he gets off of work because if I'm tweeting at the same time, he'll be bitching at me.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
He comes
Yeah.
on and sees me post some heinous shit, and he goes, "Oh, come on, I was having a great day." I say, "All right,
Yeah, like
sorry, I
masks.
ruined it for you." Right? No, that is a common topic that comes up. Yes.
Uh, and with that, remember, ASTM level 2 or above, N99 or above, or you're wasting your fucking time. And then it really needs a tight seal or it's just blowing around your face. And that's something that I think he would actually agree with us on. And then probably
He would
come up with
have so many things to say,
some
though.
other caveat on top of that, mind you.
He would have he is a persnickety person on that, and it's fine. That is absolutely necessary to have.
Well, bless his heart, he's a nuclear engineer, and that's where we need somebody like that.
Yes.
And with that, good people, it's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you again really soon.